live in fear. All these complex systems getting involved with their families, and it keeps parents awake at night, including myself. Sabrina used to wonder all the time, and I was always afraid what would happen if the police was involved. In addition to this, I also know for sure that language access is a real thing. As you can tell, I have an accent, and I speak almost 7 languages in my brain. So language barrier is a real thing for parents with special needs, creating challenges in difficult. It's very difficult for us to advocate for our children, accessing services, and misunderstanding evaluations and treatment plans, which can lead to miscommunication and limited support. This can also result in parents feeling disempowered or excluded from their child's education and care, ultimately impacting the child's development and outcomes. I hope that the need for language access will continue to be a highlight as we go through this. Maybe you hear my story, the story of a single mom with 2 girls with IDD, a 2-time cancer survivor, domestic violence survivor, or maybe even you feel sympathy for me. But I'm here to say I don't need sympathy. What I need is easier access to services. I want to share the values we talk about in my work. These values resonate with me, not only with DSHS as an employer, but also as a mother and community member. Our first one is welcome all with access and inclusion, serve with respect and dignity, collaborate with community, which I think I'm doing right now, improve services continually, communicate with clarity and choice. When I think about honoring these values, I think about people who find human services to shape their own lives. We must preserve the services that keep families afloat on a continuum from birth to death. We must protect access to these services, especially for families like mine, people of color, rural communities, and immigrants navigating complex systems. Equity is not a buzzword, it's a commitment. And we must strengthen these services by investing in innovation, culturally responsive care, and take access as yes. Evidence-based services and practices really do matter. We need to strengthen services for people like my daughter Sabella. I want to end by saying, so today let's do more than talk. Let's legislate with love, that was Sabella. Let's stand with foresight. Let's lead with courage, because when we preserve, protect, and strengthen, we are partnering together to create the lives we all want to live. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Teddy. And now we will hear from Megan Cromer, the Director of the King County Department of Community and Human Services, Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division, and the Deputy Director, Holly Wool.
Extra clap for our co-MCs. They're doing so well. Thank you so much, Teddy, for sharing your story and reminding us that when we lead with equity and dignity and love, anything is possible. Your words ground us and why we're here tonight, and the importance of protecting inclusion as a right and not a favor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Cromer. as the mom of 2 children with developmental disabilities.
Hi, everybody. I'm Holly Wu, and I'm the Deputy Director for the division. We're so glad to be here with you tonight to share our 2026 state legislative priorities and to lift up the voices and stories that guide our work.
Each year, this forum is a reminder that change happens when community leads. The priorities we're sharing here tonight reflect what we've heard from families and providers and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout King County. They center equity, inclusion, belonging, and the right for every person to live and work and thrive in their community.
We'll share 6 priorities throughout the evening, and each one will be connected to the stories you'll hear.
Tonight, we're asking the legislature to preserve, protect, and strengthen access to core services for people with developmental delays and intellectual and developmental disabilities. We know that this year brings both opportunities and lots of challenges for state and federal budget pressures that will impact the services for people that depend on them most. Our message is simple and steadfast. Investments in people with developmental disabilities are not optional. They are essential to cultivate a thriving and equitable community. King County state legislative priorities and intellectual and developmental disabilities reflect that belief. They call on the legislature to protect Medicaid, sustain early support and special education for young children, maintain employment and community inclusion services, invest in affordable and accessible housing, strengthen language access and culturally rooted supports, and preserve behavioral health care for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Each of these priorities is about making sure that people can live with dignity and stability and connection, and that the systems around them are strong enough to make all of that possible.
And I encourage folks, if you're standing and you want to see, there are lots of seats at some of the round tables, so feel free to move around. The county's first legislative priority this evening captures the necessity to protect Medicaid and safety net services for all, including people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Medicaid is the foundation of support for people with disabilities. It not only provides health insurance, it also funds essential services that make independence, safety, and community life possible. With upcoming federal Medicaid changes under H.R. 1 and other national cost-cutting measures, access to critical care and supports is at risk. We're asking lawmakers to safeguard access to the healthcare, employment, respite, and daily living supports that make independence possible for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our first speakers, Rachel and Nate Nemhauser, will share why these protections are critical.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rachel Nemhauser. I live in the 41st District. I am deeply grateful for the chance to speak with you today with my son Nate, who's not wanting to tear himself away from the iPad, but that's totally fine. He is one of nearly 280,000 adults with disabilities in Washington State who rely on Medicaid. With Nate's permission, I want to just tell you a little bit about him. Nate is 21 years old, he's autistic, and he has an intellectual disability. He's loving, mischievous, and an avid collector of all things horror movie related. Like, we have 3 life-size Chucky dolls in our Nate relies on daily support through Medicaid home and community-based waiver services, including respite care, personal care, and employment support. These services keep him safe, healthy, and engaged in the community. And in turn, the community has the benefit of his talents, his skills, and his strengths. And maybe more importantly, they have the opportunity to know him and to see firsthand what true inclusion looks like. Right now, Nate is in his final year of his school's transition program. He also works 6 hours a week at our neighborhood Pagliacci Pizza, you can see on his hat, supported by a job coach. He gets a paycheck and a free slice of pizza after every shift. I know, it's a dream scenario. He absolutely loves his job in the sense of pride and purpose and free pizza that it gives him. Nate talks all the time about his future. When school ends next year, he wants to share an apartment with his girlfriend. He wants to work more hours at Pagliacci Pizza, and of course, decorate his room with Chucky and Pennywise posters. He dreams of starting a family and building a life like that of any other adult. With the home and community-based waiver services that we currently have access to, these dreams are attainable. They're terrifying, really. A little scary, but attainable. When I see the life that Nate is building now, I can't help but think back to the phone call I made when he was 4 years old. At the time, buckling under the pressure of caring for a child with high support needs, I reached out to the Developmental Disabilities Administration, that's now known as Developmental Disabilities Community Services, for anyone keeping track, to ask for help. After telling our story and answering a few questions, I was told we were going to be on a wait list for 8 to 9 years. 8 to 9 years. I remember hanging up the phone and feeling devastated. It's an awful feeling as a parent to build up the courage to reach out for help, only to be told there is no help. It doesn't exist. To be told you're on your own and no support is coming. And in the end, it actually did take almost 8 years before Nate finally did start receiving the services he needed, and before we were finally able to surround him with the support he needed to thrive. For families like ours, Medicaid has made Nate's life possible, and his dreams are achievable. Through Medicaid, Nate has access to essential supports, health care, employment assistance, personal care, community-based services that help him live and work and belong. These aren't extras, and they're not luxuries. They're the scaffolding that holds his life together. But after the recent Medicaid cuts go into effect over the next few years, that scaffolding is at risk of collapsing. The programs and supports that Nate depends on are being squeezed. Job coaching hours are at risk of being reduced. Case managers are stretched too thin. Administrative hurdles are growing, and the fear that many of us have carried for years, that our loved ones could lose the stability we've worked really hard for them to gain, is a reality. These cuts have real human consequences. Without support, Nate could lose his job. I hate to even say it. He could lose his access to health care and his dreams for the future. He can lose his place in the community that he loves so much. And young families today who are just beginning this journey, families who make that same phone call that I did when Nate was 4, will once again hear the same impossible wait times. Those families might face even greater barriers, and that's terrifying. That's why I want to share our story, and to let you know why it is important to Nate and to me that Washington's Medicaid-funded services are protected, and the gaps left by federal cuts are filled. We need to make sure that Nate doesn't lose the supports that allow him to live with dignity and purpose. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Nate is not a waste. He is not a line item on a budget. He is a young man with plans, dreams, talents, and a deep desire to contribute. Medicaid makes that possible. For Nate, Medicaid means freedom. Freedom to work, to be part of his community, and to live the life he envisions for himself. Without it, Nate's freedom disappears. When you're making possible for people with disabilities and their families in our state need to be protected. Nate and 280,000 others like him are counting on your support. Thank you.